Hey guys, it's Forsaken Reality here with the fourth episode of the Remnant tutorial series. In this episode, we're going to be setting up our weapon blueprints. We'll be setting up a primary, a secondary, and a melee class, since that's how Remnant has it set up. Basically, there's a primary, which is your assault rifles and snipers, your secondary, which is your pistols and similar, and your melee weapon, which is your swords and just flails, I guess, and sights and other weapons in Remnant. We'll also be setting up data tables and structures to store data for our weapons. So without further ado, we will get into that. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to our blueprints folder. We're going to create a new folder called items. And in the items folder, we will create one called weapons. So we'll just right click, new folder, weapons. And inside of here, we'll create a new blueprint. That'll be an actor called BP underscore master weapon. And this will be your class that will store everything for all weapons in general, from swords to weapon to guns. And we're going to create a skeleton mesh. I'm just going to set that to, I'm going to set that to the assault rifle, I guess, so it has a mesh. And from here, we're going to create a child, and it's going to be BP underscore master range weapon. This will be your pistols and rifles. And this will be your melee. And create a couple folders. Because it's going to be children of each of these. So we'll go into our master melee and we'll just change the skeletal mesh to now to a knife. Oop. That'll be good. We're going to create a child of BP underscore knife 1, so it's the first knife. That'll be good enough for now. And we'll create a child of this. This will be our first rifle. And we'll create another child. This will be our pistol, so it'll be primary and secondary. And in our master weapon, we are good for now, I think. In there at least. Now we're going to create some sockets to attach our blueprints to, which will be our weapons. So we want to go to our meshes, skeletal character mesh, one of our master skeleton, and we want to add a socket. Weapon socket under our score R. Just gonna add the gun mesh preview so we can see how it looks. And let's get it close enough for now. So that'll work. So that's our weapon socket. And Remnant also has a back socket for your weapon. And that's on the right side of your character. And I'm just gonna, I only have one melee weapon right now, so I'm just gonna use this knife. Just to prototype it, basically. Okay. Kind of slightly get it into a decent position here. That'll work. And there is a back socket for the it's going to duplicate this socket, so copy select sockets, go up to spinal 3 again and paste sockets, and I'll create one of these, and we'll just name this one back socket primary, I believe. Yeah, so the primary weapon also goes on your back, but this will be on the opposite side. I'm just going to add this assault rifle for a reference. And there's that'll work for now. And there's also a socket right here on the thigh for our pistols. So we're going to add a socket. This is going to be socket underscore secondary. And we'll just add the pistol preview mesh here, so we can see it. Let's move this up here a little bit. And I guess that works. So we have our secondary socket for our pistols, our primary socket for our weapons, our socket for our back melee weapons, and our our weapons hellable socket, which would be, well, any of these could be switched interchangeably between them. Now we want to, we want to actually attach our weapons to each slot, each socket now. So first we can remove this weapon mesh that we have set here just for references. And we're going to want to create our event graph, begin play. And from here we're going to want to spawn our weapons. So first we're going to need a few variables. This is going to store our weapons. It's basically just like a variable, that not the actual inventory itself, but this variable will be used to feed the inventory and everything else. You want to make it an array. Actually, you want to search up master weapon. We want class references so that we can create our array. So we want 3 items, which will be our for now we'll just have our rifle, pistol, and knife. Later on, once we create a save system, that'll be fed into this to determine each item when we load into the game. So for now, we're just gonna for each loop. And the array is gonna be the weapon inventory. So it's gonna go through the weapon inventory, and for each of them, it's gonna spawn the actor from class. And the class is gonna be the array element. So it's gonna loop through and spawn weapon this, and it's gonna loop through again and go and loop through again. So the first time it loops through, it's gonna spawn, and we're gonna promote this to a variable, and this is gonna be master weapon reference, which is a reference to the class, the whole master weapon class itself. So not just one of the specifics yet. And also we want to get rid of this area. You can simply split this because we don't actually need to set the location. So once we have our reference set, we can create a branch. And so actually I'm going to need to create the data table. I was going to hopefully be able to save that for the next video, but I'm going to quickly do that now and set up some of the variables in this video that we'll need. So we want to go back to our blueprints folder, new folder, data. And in here, we need a new folder called structures. And in the structures folder, we're going to go to blueprints and create a structure, st underscore weapon data. I'm just going to quickly open that up. Name, description, mesh, okay, I want to go back to our data, new folder, enums, and we're going to create a enum underscore stance, and this is going to determine each of our weapons stances basically. So we're going to have unequip, which I don't think we'll ever really be in unless we're like eating an item or something specific like that. Rifle, pistol, melee. We'll go back to our weapon data, and we'll new variable stance. We'll look for our stance enum. So now we can set this per weapon. And go back to our structures, and we're going to create a new structure called weapon sockets. And we're actually a little more specific. Weapon socket names are actually weapon sockets. It's fine. Weapon socket, back socket, and waist socket. So we can determine where the socket actually goes. And we're just going to put name, name, and name. Go to our weapon data. And weapon sockets. Now we open this up, we can set our sockets per weapon. And might as well do this one right now since it's the only other one left that I made for the moment. And it's a structure st underscore weapon animations. And inside here, the first one's going to be idle. And this is going to be a sequence, animation sequence. Make sure it's anim sequenced because animation doesn't show up. Movement. I may change this, but for now I'm going to try to have the walking and running in the same blend space. See how that works. Sometimes I like to do it differently depending on how I want things set up. I'm pretty sure I can get a pretty good outcome with this. So the next one's going to be aim. This is going to be another sequence. And reload. Montage. Equip. That's also going to be a montage. Go to our weapon data, create a new variable. And we'll say that animation details. When we open up, I want to get our animation detail. Weapon animations. Now we open up this, we'll be able to set our animations per weapon. I'm going to go back to our master weapon, create a new variable called item details. Or actually, in the weapon, so we'll just call it. And so we can keep this naming together. We'll just call that weapon data. Can't parse through. Okay. I guess so. Now that we have that done, we can head back to our master character. And now that we want to go back to our event graph, and after we spawn in our first one, we want to get the item data. Weapon data, yeah, not item data. So you want to get weapon data. And you want to break that. And you want to check if the stance equals rifle. I figure out the best way to organize this. There we go. Okay, so if the stance equals rifle, then we will get our master weapon reference, and we will attach actor to component. And use mesh. And where we're going to be attaching it to is we get the socket details right here from our weapon data. And this one's going to be attaching it to our weapon socket, because when we spawn in, we're just going to attach our rifle to the weapon socket automatically. And if that's not that, actually first we will copy this and I'll promote it to a variable. And set the primary weapon. It's going to give us a category: weapons, weapons, weapons. Okay, so there's one. And if it's false, we're going to want to duplicate everything here except for, actually duplicate everything except for the primary weapon, copy and paste it. We're going to check if this equals the pistol. And the pistol is attached to the waist. And the target is this, so if it's... So the second time it goes through, it will hit the pistol, so it won't have the stance set to a rifle. So it'll go false, and then it'll come down here and it'll check the stance for the weapon. It'll be a pistol, so it'll attach it right there. And we also want to get our master weapon reference, promote that to a variable. Secondary weapon. So now we have a specific reference for our secondary set. And our primary. And we'll copy all this again, paste it down here. Delete the secondary reference. Put melee into there. This will be the third time it runs through this loop and spawns the next actor. And if it's not a pistol and it's not a rifle, then it's obviously melee. So it will spawn it on the back socket, which is the socket that's used for attaching melee weapons in Remnant. And finally, we will promote this to a variable. And we'll set that to melee weapon. So we have a primary, secondary, melee weapon melee reference specifically. Honestly, don't think we actually need this variable. I'm just gonna drag this in there because it might just get a little confusing later on when we have just a variable that's literally used once. It'd be better if we actually set this up in a function later on. Okay, okay, I'm going to set the primary reference first, and then I'm gonna plug that in like that, rather than setting the primary reference last. And I'll do that the same thing for all of them. Let's just make a little bit of room. Alt click to break that. Alt click again. And plug that in there. Delete the original one. So now it's spawning from the actual references themselves. And finally, the melee we don't even have plugged in. Makes it a little bit easier. Slide that over there. And plug that in. Delete this. There we go. So now we have that reference, well, that pointless reference gone, I believe. No. Where are you? Hmm. I could probably fix that up after, but for now I'm actually gonna just keep this here. It'll do for now. Right now it's just setting a reference so that it can be reused. So I could just drag out of here and plug it in everywhere, but that'll just make it even more messy than it has to be. And we'll name these rifle primary. Secondary. And attach melee. We want to go to our blueprints and items and weapons. We want to go to our, open up each of our blueprints, which will be rifle. Or actually, we want to go to our master weapon and create a variable. And this is going to be item ID. And we're going to change this to name. And what this is, it's going to set the data table row name. So basically, when we're going to create the data table in one moment, but when you look in each weapon blueprint, say if we make a data table row and it's the rifle one, now when it creates when it looks through the data table, it will look for the rifle 1 row, which I'll show you basically right now. So we want to go to our blueprints, data, right click, new folder, data table, and we want to go to our miscellaneous data table, and we're going to look for our weapon data. And this is going to be our weapon list. And we're going to add one, and it's going to be rifle 1. Notice how the row name is rifle 1. And that's what we're using this variable here for. So you can set the data table row name per weapon. So basically, when the weapon is created, it's going to get the item ID. It's going to search for that in this data table. And if it exists, it's going to set the weapon data for that item. So it's found, it's going to set all this weapon data that's found in the weapon data. So for example, this is the rifle. It's going to set all this data that we need. So for example, back socket primary. And there's no waste socket animations we never set up yet. We'll do that in another video. This one is going to be pistol 1. And you fill out this information. Pistol. And there's no back socket, so next it's going to be what did I name that one? Socket underscore secondary. Socket nearly. Getting a little bit confused now. Socket. I think that's what I named it. Yeah. And we'll add more. Yeah, as many as you want. I'm just going to add the knife. Knife. This mesh here isn't actually being plugged anywhere, but we'll plug it in to set the meshes. Melee. And the weapon. And there we go. We got those 3 weapons set up. Got their sockets set up. The weapon data is being set per weapon. And it's looking for the rifle 1, for example. It's looking for this row, so we'll set all this data. We want to set the name for pistol 1. And we'll fill out all this data for us. Just like that. And melee. And all that data will fill out automatically from the data table. Okay, now that we have that done, this should be all filled out in our data table. And we should have weapons attaching to our slots. And apparently our pistol is showing up as a... And I'm just going to set the skeletal mesh to our pistol here. You can actually go into our master weapon, break, mesh, you can set skeletal mesh. Okay, I see a problem here. We want to go into our into our data folder, structures, weapon data, and this mesh is supposed to be a skeletal component. I think that should fix that issue. Yes. But no, it does not, because now we can't even set it. Yeah, that's a weird one. I'll have to look into that a little bit. For now, we'll just go back into our data table. You can actually just Control Z until you get back to the purple one. And we will set that later, I suppose. Just having a little brain fart and being a little bit tired. So that should be everything. We have our pistol and our melee and our weapons slotted. And the reason I haven't started putting too much work into the animations yet is because I haven't finished yet, but I'm gonna be showing you basically how to get animations from ALS v4. Let's see if I have any of them in here. Basically, I'll be showing you how to get the pose animations out of ALS v4 and working in here. So we'll have our idle poses, and then we'll have our... Then we might use this one and some of the crouch poses. And maybe some of the pistol poses. But mainly I just wanted to use the idle for when we're not aimed, which is the way Remnant is, and then when we're aimed, we'll have this one. I might add in this one, so it's switch between those. Either way, that's why I haven't fully dug into setting up all the animations nicely yet, because that's gonna be splitting up these is gonna be its whole video on its own, and I should be doing that one in the next couple of videos. But I just wanted to get the weapon blueprint set up, and I didn't want to start setting up animations and then go back and have to redo a bunch of stuff because, oh, I just set up a bunch of animations, but now I want to set them up per weapon. So I had to set up the data table so we can get the per weapon and the socket stuff set up pretty much. That's going to be everything for this episode. If you found this video helpful and want to see more, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button so you don't miss out on any new tutorial videos. If you have any questions, suggestions, or comments, feel free to leave those in the comments section below or join my Discord server using the link in the description. Thank you, and I'll see you all in the next video.